Emily Shen awoke with a scream, her heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. The morning light streamed through her bedroom window, painting the familiar walls of her family's Baijan City villa in soft gold. It was her 18th birthday, again. The realization hit her like a tidal wave, memories of her past life flooding back in vivid, horrifying clarity. She had died, betrayed by those she trusted most. Her older brother Ethan, her fiancé Jason, and her adopted sister Rachel. Yet here she was, alive, given a second chance to rewrite her fate. Her hands trembled as she clutched the silk sheets, the scent of lavender from her pillow grounding her in the present. This day marked the beginning of her downfall in her previous life. Ethan had gifted her a white toy poodle named Pixie, its eyes gleaming with an unnatural malice. Jason had presented her with a white jade pendant, fabulous and flawless, which she wore proudly around her neck. She hadn't known then that the pendant was a cursed artifact, a relic from a forbidden sect capable of binding souls to vessels. Rachel's soul, trapped in the poodle, had used the pendant's power to swap bodies with Emily after 30 days, stealing her life while Emily, trapped in the dog's body, was skinned alive by Ethan and Jason, her flesh cooked into a fragrant stew for Rachel to consume. Emily's stomach churned at the memory, bile rising in her throat. She stumbled to the mirror, her reflection pale but human. Her long black hair, her sharp brown eyes, her own body, not the poodle's. "I'm back," she whispered, her voice shaking with fear and resolve. The betrayal had shattered her trust, but the pain had forged something new, a burning determination to protect herself and her family, no matter the cost. She paced her room, the polished hardwood cool beneath her bare feet, piecing together the fragments of her past life. Rachel, she now understood, was no ordinary adopted sister. She was Ethan's half-sister, born to Huangxia, Ethan's biological mother, who had been abandoned by Emily's father years ago. Rachel's envy had festered in poverty, her leukemia diagnosis pushing her to desperation. She had masterminded the body swap ritual, convincing Ethan and Jason to betray Emily for her sake. Driven by resentment for being raised as a lesser heir, Ethan had his agenda: control of the Shen group, the family empire. He had bribed executives and planned to kill Emily's parents in a staged accident, ensuring his dominance. As a housekeeper, Huangxia had been complicit, monitoring Emily to ensure the plan succeeded. The weight of these truths pressed against Emily's chest, but she forced herself to breathe. She couldn't afford to falter. In her past life, she had been naive, trusting Ethan's warmth, Jason's promises, and Rachel's feigned kindness. Now she saw through their masks. The poodle, Pixie, was the key, Rachel's soul vessel. If Emily could neutralize it before the pendant's 30-day ritual was complete, she could disrupt their plan. But time was short, and the stakes were deadly. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, a reminder of the birthday party her parents had planned before leaving for their business trip. They were still alive, Emily realized, her heart aching with relief. In her previous life, they had died in the accident Ethan orchestrated. She would warn them, but first she had to act against Pixie. The thought of the dog sent a shiver down her spine, its red eyes and vicious snarls haunting her nightmares. Yet, she couldn't let fear paralyze her. Emily dressed quickly, choosing a simple black dress that felt like armor, and grabbed her car keys. The villa was quiet, her parents abroad, and the staff dismissed for the day. She drove to the city's outskirts, where a rundown breeding kennel operated in the shadows. The air was thick with the stench of fur and filth as she approached the owner, a bald man with greedy eyes. "I have a dog," she said, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. "A female toy poodle. I want her bred immediately, as many times as possible." The man raised an eyebrow, sensing profit. "That'll cost you. A small dog like that might not survive multiple litters." Emily didn't flinch. She transferred 50,000 yuan without hesitation, her resolve unyielding. "Make it happen," she said, handing him a photo of Pixie. "She's a show dog. I want her occupied." The owner grinned, promising results, and Emily left, her hands shaking as she gripped the steering wheel. Back at the villa, she stood in her room, the weight of her decision settling in. Sending Pixie to the kennel was cruel, and a flicker of guilt stirred within her. She wasn't a monster, but Rachel's soul inhabited that dog, plotting her destruction. Emily's eyes fell on a framed photo of her family, her parents' warm smiles, Ethan's forced grin, and her innocent laughter. Tears pricked her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered, unsure if she was apologizing to herself or the dog. Her innocence had died with her past life, replaced by a survivor's ruthlessness. As the clock struck noon, party guests began to arrive, their chatter filling the villa. Emily plastered on a smile, greeting friends and relatives, but her mind was elsewhere. Ethan and Jason would come soon, bringing Pixie and the pendant. While plotting their downfall, she had to play her part, pretend to be the trusting sister, the loving fiancé. Her heart raced at facing them, but she steeled herself. This was her second chance, and she would not waste it. The doorbell rang, and Emily's breath caught. Ethan's voice echoed through the foyer, warm and familiar, followed by Jason's laughter. They were here. The game had begun. Emily straightened, her fear giving way to a cold, calculated resolve. She would protect her family, reclaim her life, and ensure Rachel, Ethan, and Jason paid for their betrayal. No matter what it took, she would win. Emily stood frozen in her bedroom, the distant hum of birthday party guests filtering through the villa's walls. Her heart still raced from the decision to send Pixie, the toy poodle harboring Rachel's soul, to the breeding kennel. But as she braced for Ethan and Jason's arrival, a more profound dread gnawed at her, a need to understand the dark magic that had stolen her life in the past. The jade pendant, the poodle, and the body swap were pieces of a sinister puzzle she had to unravel to defeat her enemies. She closed her eyes, letting the fragmented memories of her previous life guide her to the truth. In her past life, Emily had worn the jade pendant for 30 days, unaware of its power. On the final night, a searing pain had torn through her, and she awoke trapped in Pixie's body, barking helplessly as Rachel, now in Emily's form, sneered down at her. The horror of that moment lingered, but now, reborn, Emily sensed the pendant was more than a trinket. It was a relic, its smooth white surface etched with faint runes she hadn't noticed before. Her mind recalled a conversation overheard in her past life when Rachel, thinking Emily was asleep, had whispered to Ethan about a sect and a ritual. The words had meant nothing then, but now they were clues. Emily crossed her room to her desk, where a locked drawer held her most private possessions. She retrieved a leather-bound journal, its pages filled with notes she'd scribbled in the hours since her rebirth. During her drive back from the kennel, she'd recalled a name, the Order of the Jade Veil, a forbidden sect rumored to have mastered soul-binding centuries ago. The sect's artifacts, like the pendant, could trap a soul in a living vessel, animal or human, and transfer it to another body under specific conditions. Emily's pen trembled as she wrote, 30 days of contact, proximity to the vessel, a willing host. The pendant had bound Rachel's soul to Pixie, and Emily's constant wearing of it, with Pixie nearby, had completed the ritual. Her breath hitched as she pieced it together. Rachel, dying of leukemia in her past life, had been desperate to escape her frail body. She wasn't just Ethan's adopted sister. She was his half-sister, born to Huangxia, a woman scorned by Emily's father. Rachel's envy of Emily's wealth and health had fueled her ambition, but her cunning made her dangerous. Emily remembered Rachel's late-night studies and her fascination with occult texts disguised as history books. Rachel had tracked down the pendant, likely through Huangxia's underworld connections, and convinced Ethan and Jason to join her scheme. Resentful of his secondary status in the Shen family, Ethan saw a chance to seize control. Jason, smitten with Rachel, was her loyal pawn. Emily's journal entry grew frantic. Rachel planned it all. She trapped her soul in Pixie, knowing Ethan would gift the dog to me. The pendant was the key, but proximity was crucial. Pixie had to stay close for the ritual to work. She shuddered, recalling how Pixie had insisted on sleeping in her bed, her red eyes glowing in the dark. The ritual required both the pendant's wearer and the soul's vessel to remain in close contact for 30 days, a detail Emily now understood was her greatest weapon. By sending Pixie to the kennel, she had disrupted the proximity, buying time to dismantle the plan. But the pendant's power wasn't the only threat. Emily's thoughts turned to Ethan's broader scheme. In her past life, after her death, her parents had perished in a car accident orchestrated by Ethan. He had bribed their driver, a loyal employee turned traitor, to stage the crash. Ethan's control over the Shen Group's finances, gained through years of manipulating executives, had positioned him to inherit the empire. The housekeeper, Mrs. Huang, had been his eyes in the villa, ensuring Emily suspected nothing. The trio's plan was meticulous: eliminate Emily, kill her parents, and install Rachel in Emily's body as the Shen heiress. Emily slammed the journal shut, her chest tight with anger and fear. The order of the Jade Veil's magic was real, and Rachel had wielded it precisely. But Emily wasn't the naive girl she'd been. She paced her room, the faint clinking of party glasses downstairs grounding her. The pendant's rules gave her an edge. The ritual couldn't proceed without Pixie's proximity. Yet Ethan and Jason would soon arrive with the dog and the pendant, expecting her to accept them unquestioningly. She had to play the part, feign ignorance, hide her knowledge, while plotting her next move. A knock at the door startled her. "Miss Emily?" called a maid. "Your brother and Mr. Jason are here." Emily's pulse quickened. She tucked the journal back into the drawer, locking it securely. Her reflection in the mirror showed a young woman with steely eyes, no longer the trusting girl of her past life. The pendant's curse had nearly destroyed her, but now it was her weapon. She would use her knowledge to outsmart Rachel, expose Ethan's treachery, and unmask Huangxia's role. The party awaited, and with it the first test of her resolve. Emily smoothed her black dress, her fingers brushing the spot where the pendant would soon hang. She wouldn't wear it, not the real one. A plan was forming: replace the cursed artifact with a fake, keep Pixie at a distance, and turn the ritual against her enemies. The Order of the Jade Veil had given Rachel power, but Emily's rebirth had given her something greater: foresight. As she descended the staircase, the chatter of guests growing louder, she felt the weight of her mission. The curse was unveiled, and the battle had begun. Emily stood at the top of the villa's grand staircase, the murmur of her 18th birthday party swelling below. The weight of her reborn mission, to outwit Rachel, Ethan, and Jason, pressed against her, but her resolve wavered as memories of her past life surged, sharp and unrelenting. Before facing her betrayers, she needed to anchor herself in the pain of what had been, to fuel the fire of what must be. She slipped into her study, the door clicking shut behind her, and sank into a leather chair. Her eyes closed, and the shadows of her previous life enveloped her, vivid as a nightmare she couldn't escape. It had begun on this same day, her 18th birthday, 2 years ago in her first life. The villa was alive with laughter, the scent of jasmine and roasted duck wafting through the air. Emily, then a wide-eyed girl, had twirled in a white dress, her heart light with love for her family. Ethan, her older brother, had arrived late. His suit was rumpled, but his smile was warm. "For my favorite sister," he'd said, presenting a white toy poodle with a red ribbon around its neck. "Meet Pixie." The dog's eyes, unnaturally bright, had unnerved her, but she'd pushed the feeling aside, hugging Ethan in gratitude. Jason, her fiancé, had followed, slipping a white jade pendant around her neck. "A safety charm," he'd murmured, his fingers lingering. "Wear it always, Emily." She'd beamed, blind to the darkness in their gifts. Rachel, the adopted sister Ethan had brought into their home 3 years earlier, was the shadow over that day. Emily remembered her standing apart, her frail frame wrapped in a silk shawl, her leukemia diagnosis casting a pall. Rachel had been 16 when Ethan found her, a supposed orphan he'd insisted their parents adopt. Her charm had won their mother's heart, and even Jason seemed drawn to her quiet grace. Emily had tried to love her, sharing clothes and secrets, but Rachel's smiles never reached her eyes. Now reborn, Emily knew the truth. Rachel was Ethan's half-sister, born to Huangxia, and her envy of Emily's life had festered into a plan to steal it. The weeks after her birthday had unraveled Emily's world. Pixie, the poodle, was a menace. Her behavior was erratic. She'd growl when alone with Emily, her eyes glinting red, but in front of others she was docile. Emily's complaints were dismissed. Ethan called her paranoid, and Jason accused her of cruelty. Rachel, meanwhile, grew sicker, her leukemia worsening. Emily had expected Ethan and Jason to rally around her, but they were strangely detached, sending Rachel abroad for treatment without a word. She'd felt guilty for her relief, unaware they were orchestrating her doom. The pendant, cool against her skin, had become a constant. Emily wore it faithfully, honoring Jason's request. She didn't know then that it was a relic of the Order of the Jade Veil, binding her soul to Pixie's, where Rachel's soul resided. The ritual required 30 days of contact, with Pixie kept close. Rachel had ensured this, insisting that Pixie sleep in Emily's room. Emily's unease grew, but her trust in Ethan and Jason blinded her to the trap. On the 30th night, a searing pain had ripped through her. She awoke, disoriented, her vision low to the ground, her voice a frantic bark. She was Pixie, trapped in the poodle's body. Above her stood Rachel, wearing Emily's face, her smile cruel. "You were so easy, Emily," she'd sneered, raising a fire poker. Ethan and Jason appeared, their faces cold, knives gleaming in their hands. "It's for Rachel," Ethan had said, his voice devoid of remorse. They skinned her alive, her barks fading into silence, her flesh cooked into a stew Rachel consumed to seal the ritual. Emily's last sight was Rachel's faint smile, cursing her as a fool. The memory clawed at Emily's heart, tears streaming down her face in the study. She'd been Ethan's sister, Jason's fiancé, yet they'd betrayed her for Rachel. Now she understood their motives. Rachel, driven by envy and desperation, had masterminded the body swap to escape her dying body. Resentful of his secondary status in the Shen family, Ethan had seen Rachel as his true kin, plotting to kill their parents and seize the Shen group. Jason, enamored with Rachel, had been her willing accomplice. Huangxia, their mother, had posed as a housekeeper to monitor Emily, ensuring the plan's success. Emily's fists clenched, her nails digging into her palms. The betrayal had shattered her, but it also forged her resolve. In her past life, she'd been a pawn, trusting and naive. Now, she was a warrior, armed with knowledge of the pendant's curse and her enemy's plans. She wiped her tears, her gaze hardening. Ethan and Jason were downstairs, bringing Pixie and the pendant. She'd sent Pixie to the kennel to disrupt the ritual, but the battle was far from won. Rachel's cunning, Ethan's ambition, and Huangxia's deceit loomed large. She rose, her reflection in the study's mirror showing a woman transformed by pain. The shadows of her past life were her strength now, each memory a spark igniting her revenge. She would face her betrayers, play their game, and turn their curse against them. The party awaited, and with it, the chance to rewrite her story. Emily lingered in her study, the echo of her past life's betrayal still raw in her chest. The birthday party buzzed downstairs, but her thoughts were consumed by Rachel, the architect of her death. To defeat her, Emily needed to understand her, not just as a scheming sister, but as a woman driven by a venomous envy that had twisted her into a monster. Rachel wasn't just Ethan's accomplice or Jason's obsession. She was the heart of the conspiracy, her motives rooted in a lifetime of resentment. Emily sat at her desk, her journal open, and let the memories of Rachel's life unfold, piecing together her enemy's mind. Rachel had entered the Shen household 3 years ago, a pale 16-year-old with hollow cheeks and a quiet demeanor. Ethan had introduced her as an orphan, a struggling student he'd met through a charity program. He'd pleaded with their parents to adopt her, claiming she deserved a better life. Emily, then 15, had welcomed her, eager for a sister, but Rachel's warmth was a facade. Behind her soft smiles lay a calculating gaze, her eyes lingering on Emily's designer clothes, the villa's opulent halls, and the Shen family's wealth. Emily had mistaken her silence for shyness, not recognizing the envy festering within. Now, reborn, Emily saw the truth. Rachel was no orphan. She was Ethan's half-sister, born to Huangxia, the woman Emily's father had once loved and left. Huangxia had raised Rachel in a cramped apartment on the outskirts of Baijian City, scraping by on factory wages. Rachel's childhood was one of hand-me-downs and hunger, her mother's bitterness a constant refrain. The Shens had stolen their rightful place. Huangxia's stories of her lost love, Chen Donglin, Emily's father, painted the Shen family as thieves of her happiness. Rachel absorbed this resentment, her heart hardening against Emily, the privileged daughter who had everything she lacked. Rachel's leukemia diagnosis at 14 was the spark that ignited her ambition. The disease ravaged her body, but her mind grew sharper, fueled by a desperate need to survive. She pored over Huangxia's old books, relics from a shady antique dealer, and discovered texts about the Order of the Jade Veil. Like the Jade Pendant, the sect's artifacts promised a way to cheat death by swapping souls. Rachel saw her chance. She would steal Emily's body, health, and future. Desperate to save her daughter, Huangxia reconnected with Ethan, who had secretly visited them for years. Resentful of his secondary status in the Shen family, Ethan agreed to help, seeing Rachel as his true kin and a path to power. Emily's pen scratched across her journal, detailing Rachel's cunning. She played us all, she wrote. Rachel had orchestrated her adoption, knowing the Shen's wealth would give her access to Emily. She charmed Emily's mother with her fragility, won Jason's heart with her vulnerability, and fed Ethan's bitterness with promises of the Shen Empire. Her leukemia was real, but her helplessness was a lie. Rachel had spent nights studying the pendant's ritual, learning its rules, 30 days of contact, proximity to the soul's vessel, a willing host. Through a painful ritual, Huangxia had trapped her soul in Pixie, the poodle, and ensured that Ethan would gift the dog to Emily. Emily recalled moments that now made sense. Rachel's late-night whispers with Ethan, her fascination with Emily's routines, and her insistence that Pixie sleep in Emily's room. She'd manipulated Jason too, her soft touches and tearful pleas binding him to her cause. Rachel's envy wasn't just for Emily's wealth, but for her life, strength, and place as the Shen heiress. Emily remembered a night when Rachel, pale and trembling, had clutched her hand. "You're so lucky, Emily," she'd said, her voice laced with something dark. Emily thought it was gratitude, but now she knew it was hatred. The depth of Rachel's malice chilled Emily. She wasn't just a victim of circumstance, but a mastermind who'd turned her pain into a weapon. Yet, Emily felt a flicker of pity. Rachel's life had been stolen by poverty and illness, her mother's bitterness shaping her into a predator. But pity didn't soften Emily's resolve. Rachel had chosen to destroy her, and Emily would not forgive. Her journal entry ended. Rachel's envy made her dangerous, but her arrogance will be her downfall. She thinks I'm still the naive girl she betrayed. Emily closed the journal, her heart steady despite the weight of Rachel's motives. Understanding her enemy gave her power. Rachel's plan relied on Emily's ignorance, but Emily was no longer blind. She'd sent Pixie to the kennel, disrupting the ritual's proximity rule. The pendant, soon to be offered by Jason, would be swapped for a fake. Ethan's ambition to kill her parents and seize the Shen group, Huangxia's role as the scheming housekeeper, and Emily would counter them all. But first, she had to face Rachel's allies, waiting downstairs with their poisoned gifts. The party's noise grew louder, a reminder of the role she must play. Emily stood, her reflection in the study's mirror showing a woman forged by betrayal. Rachel's envy had set this war in motion, but Emily's resolve would end it. She smoothed her dress, ready to meet Ethan and Jason, to smile through her fear and begin her revenge. The shadows of Rachel's past had revealed her enemy's heart, and Emily would use that knowledge to strike. Emily stood at the edge of her study, the polished oak door separating her from the vibrant chaos of her 18th birthday party below. The laughter and clinking glasses felt like a distant world, one she no longer belonged to. Her heart pounded, not from the anticipation of celebration, but from the imminent arrival of Ethan and Jason, her betrayers, who would bring the cursed jade pendant and Pixie, the poodle harboring Rachel's soul. She'd sent Pixie to a breeding kennel hours ago, a desperate act to disrupt Rachel's body swap ritual, but the weight of facing her enemies now threatened to unravel her. Emily pressed her hands against her face, fighting the storm of fear and grief that surged within. To survive, she had to confront her pain and forge it into strength. In her past life, Emily had been a trusting sister, a hopeful fiancé, blind to the malice of those closest to her. Ethan's warm hugs, Jason's tender promises, and Rachel's quiet gratitude were her anchors. But they'd used her love against her, trapping her soul in Pixie's body and butchering her for Rachel's rebirth. The memory of her death, Ethan's cold eyes, Jason's steady knife, Rachel's cruel smile, haunted her, waking her in the night with screams. Reborn, she carried those scars, her trust shattered, her innocence lost. Yet fear clawed at her resolve as she stood on the cusp of confronting them. Could she face their familiar faces, knowing the monsters beneath? Emily sank onto the study's velvet sofa, her black dress pooling around her. She closed her eyes, letting the emotions she'd suppressed since her rebirth surface. Grief for her stolen life mingled with rage at her betrayal, but beneath it all was guilt. Sending Pixie to the kennel had been her first strike, but the act felt cruel, even if the dog was Rachel's vessel. Emily wasn't a monster, yet survival demanded ruthlessness. She thought of her parents, still alive on their business trip, unaware of Ethan's plan to kill them in a staged accident. In her past life, they'd died because of her naivety. The guilt of failing them twisted her gut, but also steeled her. She couldn't let fear win, not again. Her fingers traced the edge of her journal left open on the desk. She'd written of Rachel's envy, Ethan's ambition, and Huangxia's deceit as the housekeeper, Mrs. Huang. Understanding their motives gave her clarity, but it didn't ease the ache of betrayal. Ethan, her brother, had resented his role as the adopted heir, plotting to seize the Shen group. Jason, her fiancé, had fallen for Rachel's manipulations, trading Emily's love for a twisted loyalty. Rachel, driven by a lifetime of poverty and illness, had orchestrated the ritual of the Order of the Jade Veil, using the jade pendant to steal Emily's body. Huangxia had enabled it all, posing as a housekeeper to ensure Emily's compliance. Facing them meant wearing a mask, hiding her pain behind a smile. A knock at the door jolted her. "Miss Emily, your brother's here," a maid called. Her pulse spiked, fear flooding her veins. She imagined Ethan's grin, Jason's charm, the poodle's eerie eyes. Her hands trembled, but she forced them still. "I can do this," she whispered, her voice shaky but firm. She stood, smoothing her dress, and caught her reflection in the study's mirror. Her brown eyes, once soft, now burned with determination. The girl who'd trusted unquestioningly was gone. In her place was a survivor, ready to play their game and win. Emily opened the door and descended the staircase, the party's glow enveloping her. Guests smiled, offering birthday wishes. But she focused on the foyer, where Ethan and Jason stood. Ethan held a pet carrier, and only Emily knew Pixie's absence was a secret. Jason clutched a velvet box, the pendant inside. Her stomach churned, but she forced a smile, her mask slipping into place. "Ethan! Jason!" she called, her voice bright, betraying none of her terror. Ethan's eyes crinkled with warmth, but Emily saw the calculation beneath. "Happy birthday, sis," he said, setting the carrier down. "I got you something special." Jason stepped forward, opening the box to reveal the jade pendant, its runes glinting faintly. "For you, Emily," he said, his gaze intense. "Wear it for me, okay?" Her skin crawled, but she nodded, taking the box with steady hands. "It's beautiful," she lied, her smile unwavering. Inside, her heart raced, memories of her death flashing. Knives, barks, Rachel's laughter. But she buried the fear, her guilt, her grief. This was her chance to rewrite her fate, protect her parents, and dismantle Ethan's empire. As guests swarmed, Emily excused herself, clutching the pendant's box. She slipped into a quiet hallway, her mask cracking. Tears welled, but she wiped them away. No more weakness, she vowed. The pendant was her enemy's weapon, but she'd turn it against them with a fake. Pixie was gone, her parents warned, her plan in motion. The fear remained, but so did her strength. She straightened, ready to rejoin the party, her heart a battlefield where pain forged resolve. The mask was on, and the war had begun. Emily stood in the dimly lit hallway, the velvet box containing the cursed jade pendant clutched tightly in her hands. The buzz of her 18th birthday party filtered through the villa's walls, starkly contrasting the dread coiling in her chest. She had faced Ethan and Jason, accepted their poisoned gifts with a feigned smile, and maintained her mask of innocence. But the empty pet carrier Ethan had brought, meant to hold Pixie, the poodle harboring Rachel's soul, reminded her of her bold first move, sending the dog to a breeding kennel to disrupt the body swap ritual. As she prepared to rejoin the party, a chilling realization hit her. Pixie's absence wouldn't go unnoticed, and Rachel's malice, even from a distance, was a threat she couldn't ignore. Emily slipped the pendant's box into her purse and returned to the bustling ballroom, her black dress blending into the crowd. Guests swirled around her, their laughter grating against her nerves. Ethan and Jason stood near the dessert table, their heads bent in quiet conversation. Ethan's brow furrowed, his eyes darting to the pet carrier now stashed by the wall. He'd expected to present Pixie to begin the 30-day ritual of the Order of the Jade Veil, where the pendant's wearer and the soul's vessel, Pixie, had to remain close. Emily's heart raced. She'd disrupted that plan, but the poodle's eerie presence lingered in her memory, a warning of Rachel's cunning. In her past life, Pixie had been more than a pet. She was Rachel's vessel, her soul bound to the dog through the sect's dark magic. Emily recalled the first night after her birthday. Pixie had curled up on her bed, her small body deceptively innocent. Alone, the poodle's demeanor had shifted. Her eyes, glinting red in the moonlight, had fixed on Emily with a hatred that felt human. By morning, Emily's room was a wreck, her silk pillows shredded, her vanity's contents scattered, and a foul stench from a puddle on her rug. Pixie had sat smugly atop the chaos, her gaze daring Emily to react. When Emily had reached for her, the dog snapped, nearly biting her hand, a low growl echoing Rachel's contempt. Emily had tried to tell Ethan, her voice trembling as she pointed to the destruction. She'd said there's something wrong with Pixie, showing him a scratch on her arm. Ethan had laughed, ruffling the dog's fur. She's just playful, Em. You're overreacting. Jason had been worse, his tone sharp. You may not be cut out for responsibility if you can't handle a puppy. Their dismissal had stung, but Emily, naive then, had doubted herself. Now she knew Pixie's malice was Rachel's, a deliberate taunt to break her spirit while the pendant's ritual ticked forward. Reborn, Emily understood the poodle's role. Rachel, trapped in Pixie's body, had used her proximity to torment Emily, ensuring the ritual's success. The dog's aggression, knocking over Emily's jewelry, soiling her bed, wasn't random. It was Rachel asserting dominance, reveling in Emily's powerlessness. Emily's journal, tucked away in her study, held a note from her reborn reflections. Pixie's eyes were Rachel's, her hatred a promise of my death. The memory fueled her resolve, but also her fear. Even at the kennel, Rachel's soul was a threat, her cunning unbound by distance. As Emily mingled with guests, her eyes tracked Ethan. He approached, his smile tight. "Where's Pixie, Emily? I thought you'd love to show her off." His tone was casual, but his gaze probed, sensing her deception. Emily's pulse quickened, but she kept her voice light. "Oh, I sent her to a trainer for the day. She's a bit wild." Ethan's jaw twitched, but he nodded, retreating to Jason. Emily exhaled, her mask holding. She'd bought time, but Ethan's suspicion meant Rachel's influence was already at work, even from afar. Emily's thoughts turned to the broader conspiracy. Rachel, driven by envy and illness, had masterminded the ritual, but Ethan and Jason were her enablers. Ethan, plotting to kill their parents and seize the Shen group, had used Rachel's scheme to eliminate Emily. Jason, blinded by love for Rachel, had betrayed his fiancé. Huang Xia, their mother, would soon arrive as the housekeeper, Mrs. Huang, to monitor Emily's compliance. Pixie's malice was the first thread in their web, and Emily had to cut it before it tightened. She excused herself, slipping into the garden for air. The night was cool, jasmine heavy in the breeze. Alone, Emily's mask slipped, her hands shaking. Pixie's red eyes haunted her, a reminder of Rachel's hatred. She'd sent the poodle to a brutal kennel, a necessary cruelty that gnawed at her conscience. "I'm not like them," she whispered, but doubt lingered. To defeat Rachel, she had to match her ruthlessness, yet remain human. Her parents' faces flashed in her mind, alive but in danger. She'd warned them, but Ethan's reach was long. Pixie's absence was her first victory, but the war was beginning. Emily straightened, her resolve hardening. Rachel's malice, embodied in Pixie, was a warning of the fight ahead. She'd face Ethan's questions, swap the pendant with a fake, and unravel Huang Xia's role. The garden's shadows seemed to pulse with Rachel's presence, but Emily met them with defiance. She returned to the party, her fear buried, her strength a shield. The poodle's malice had marked her enemy's intent, and Emily would answer with fire. Emily glided through the crowded ballroom, her smile a practiced shield as she navigated the sea of birthday well-wishers. The weight of the velvet box containing the cursed jade pendant pressed against her purse, a reminder of the danger lurking beneath the party's festive glow. She had deflected Ethan's probing about Pixie's absence, claiming the poodle was with a trainer, but his narrowed eyes told her he suspected more. Jason's lingering gaze, heavy with expectation, urged her to wear the pendant, unaware she planned to swap it with a fake. Yet a new threat loomed, one Emily had only begun to unravel: the housekeeper, Mrs. Huang, whose arrival would mark another piece of Rachel's conspiracy falling into place. To outmaneuver her enemies, Emily must uncover Huang Xia's proper role. As the party swirled around her, Emily's mind raced, piecing together fragments from her past life. In that timeline, Mrs. Huang appeared a week after her 18th birthday, and Ethan hired her as a part-time housekeeper while their parents were abroad. Her cooking was bland, her cleaning sloppy, but her devotion to Pixie had been unmistakable. She'd fed the poodle premium beef, brushed her fur daily, and ignored Emily's complaints about the dog's destructive behavior. Emily, naive then, had thought her merely incompetent. Now, reborn, she knew better. Huang was Huangxia, Ethan and Rachel's biological mother, a key player in their plot to steal Emily's life and the Shen Empire. Emily excused herself from a guest's small talk and slipped into a quiet alcove, her phone in hand. She opened a secure app she'd installed after her rebirth and reviewed notes from her investigation. Days ago, she'd hired a private investigator to dig into Ethan's contacts, suspecting he'd orchestrated more than just the pendant's ritual. The investigator's report, delivered that morning, confirmed her fears. Huang Xia, once Chen Donglin's lover, had never left Baijian City after he married Emily's mother. She'd secretly raised Ethan and Rachel, fueling their resentment against the Shens. When Rachel's leukemia worsened, Huang Xia reconnected with Ethan, offering her underworld ties to acquire the Jade pendant from the Order of the Jade Veil. The report details Huang Xia's role. She'd posed as Mrs. Huang to infiltrate the Shen household, monitoring Emily to ensure she wore the pendant and keeping Pixie close for the 30-day ritual. Her presence had been strategic, her neglect of household duties a cover for her actual task, enabling Rachel's body swap. Emily's past life flashed before her. Huang Xia's sly glances, her whispered conversations with Ethan, her refusal to discipline Pixie. She'd been the conspiracy's silent enforcer, ensuring Emily remained oblivious while Ethan plotted to kill their parents and seize the Shen group. Emily's fingers tightened around her phone, anger simmering. Huang Xia's betrayal cut deep, not just as a mother to her enemies, but as a woman who'd used her pain to justify destroying Emily's family. Yet, Emily saw an opportunity. Huang Xia's greed, evident in her past life when she'd pocketed Emily's jewelry, could be her weakness. If Emily could manipulate her, she might turn the conspiracy against itself. A plan formed. She'd welcome Mrs. Huang, feign trust, and use her presence to expose Ethan and Rachel's schemes. The ballroom doors swung open, and a familiar figure entered. Huang Xia, dressed in a modest gray uniform, her hair pulled into a tight bun. Ethan trailed behind, his smile forced as he introduced her. Emily, meet Mrs. Huang, our new housekeeper. With Mom and Dad away, she'll keep things running. Huang Xia's eyes met Emily's, her expression deferential but sharp, like a predator sizing up prey. Emily's heart pounded, memories of her past life's torment, Pixie's destruction, Huang Xia's complicity, threatening to crack her composure. But she buried her fear, extending a hand. "Welcome, Mrs. Huang," she said, her voice warm. "I'm sure you'll be a great help." Huang Xia nodded, her dimples mirroring Rachel's, a genetic clue Emily hadn't noticed before. "Thank you, Miss Emily," she replied, her tone syrupy. Ethan clapped Emily's shoulder, his touch a mockery of brotherly affection. "See, Em? Everything's under control." Emily smiled, her mask flawless, but inside she seethed. Ethan's confidence, Huang Xia's presence, Jason's expectant glances, they thought her a pawn, unaware she held the board. As Huang Xia retreated to the kitchen, Emily followed Ethan's gaze. He whispered to Jason, their words inaudible, but their urgency clear. Pixie's absence rattled them, and their ritual was disrupted. Emily's decision to send the poodle to the kennel had been a calculated risk that bought her time but invited scrutiny. She needed to act fast, swap the pendant, monitor Huang Xia, and warn her parents of Ethan's murder plot. Her investigator had already alerted them, urging an early return, but every moment Huang Xia spent in the villa was a threat. Emily rejoined the party, her mind racing. Huang Xia's role was clear. She was Rachel's anchor, Ethan's spy, the conspiracy's linchpin. But Emily was no longer the trusting girl of her past. She'd use Huang Xia's greed, planting temptations to expose her. The pendant, Pixie's fate, her parents' safety, each was a thread in the web she'd unravel. As she smiled at a guest, her eyes locked with Huang Xia's across the room. The housekeeper's gaze flickered, a hint of suspicion. Emily's pulse quickened, but she held her ground. The conspiracy was exposed, and she was ready to strike. Emily stood in the villa's opulent ballroom, the glow of chandeliers casting shadows over her 18th birthday party. Her smile, a carefully crafted mask, hid the storm within as she watched Huang Xia, the housekeeper and Ethan's biological mother, slip into the kitchen. The cursed jade pendant, now in Emily's purse, was a ticking bomb, its ritual disrupted by her decision to send Pixie, Rachel's soul vessel, to a breeding kennel. Ethan and Jason's uneasy glances told her they sensed her deception, but a greater threat loomed: Ethan's ambition to seize the Shen group and eliminate her family. To dismantle his plan, Emily needed to uncover the depth of his treachery, and she was running out of time. As guests swirled around her, Emily's mind churned with memories of her past life. Ethan, her older brother, had always carried a subtle edge, his warmth tinged with resentment. She'd chalked it up to sibling rivalry, blind to his motives. In that timeline, after her death, her parents had perished in a car accident, their driver bribed to stage the crash. Ethan had emerged as the Shen group's heir, his control cemented through years of manipulation. Now, reborn, Emily saw the truth. Ethan's ambition wasn't just personal, it was a calculated bid to destroy the Shen family and claim their empire for himself and Rachel, his true sister. Emily slipped into a quiet corridor, her phone buzzing with a new message from her private investigator. The report, compiled over days, laid bare Ethan's machinations. He'd spent years ingratiating himself with the Shen Group's board, bribing key executives with promises of wealth and power. He'd siphoned funds into offshore accounts, creating a shadow network to secure his takeover. The car accident that killed her parents had been meticulously planned. Ethan had paid the driver, a trusted employee, to sabotage the brakes, ensuring a fatal crash during their business trip. The investigator's final note chilled her. Ethan's influence runs deep. He's already positioned allies to block your parents' return. Her heart raced, anger mingling with fear. Ethan's ambition was a web, its strands reaching every corner of the Shen Empire. In her past life, she'd been a pawn, unaware of his meetings with board members, his late-night calls to shady contacts. She remembered a moment, months before her death, when Ethan had returned from a business trip, his eyes gleaming with a secret triumph. "Big things are coming, Em," he'd said, ruffling her hair. She'd smiled, trusting him, not knowing he was plotting her family's ruin. Emily's thoughts turned to the broader conspiracy. Rachel, Ethan's half-sister, had driven the body swap ritual, her envy and illness fueling her desire to steal Emily's life. The jade pendant, a relic of the Order of the Jade Veil, required 30 days of contact with Pixie, Rachel's soul vessel, to work. Huangxia, posing as Mrs. Huang, had ensured Emily's compliance, and her role as housekeeper was a cover for her spying. Ethan's ambition tied it all together. By eliminating Emily and her parents, he'd clear the path for Rachel to become the Shen heiress, securing his control. Blinded by love for Rachel, Jason was a willing tool, and his betrayal was a wound Emily still felt. She pocketed her phone and returned to the ballroom, her eyes locking on Ethan. He stood by the bar, his charm effortless as he chatted with a board member. Emily's stomach twisted. She recognized the man as one of Ethan's bribed allies. Her investigator had warned that Ethan's network was active, ready to strike if her parents returned early. She'd contacted them days ago urging caution, but Ethan's reach was a growing threat. She needed evidence to expose him, and fast. Emily approached Ethan, her smile bright. "Having fun, big brother?" she asked, her tone playful. He grinned, but his eyes were sharp. "Always, Em. Where's that pendant? Jason's dying to see you wear it." She laughed, patting her purse. "Soon, I promise." His gaze lingered, searching for cracks in her facade. She held his stare, her fear buried. Ethan's ambition was her target, and she'd turn his plans against him. In her study, Emily opened her laptop and accessed a secure server her investigator had set up. She'd installed surveillance in the villa, a precaution from her reborn knowledge. She'd record Ethan's interactions tonight, hoping to catch him plotting with his allies. She also drafted a message to her parents, detailing Ethan's bribed driver and urging them to switch vehicles. Her fingers trembled. Saving them was her priority, but Ethan's ambition was a hydra, each head a new danger. As she rejoined the party, Huangxia's presence in the kitchen reminded her of the conspiracy's layers. Rachel's ritual, Ethan's takeover, and Huangxia's deceit were intertwined, and Emily was the only one who could stop them. She'd swap the pendant, expose Ethan's allies, and protect her parents. Ethan's ambition had built a fortress, but Emily's resolve was a battering ram. She smiled at a guest, her heart a furnace of defiance. The conspiracy was vast, but she'd tear it down piece by piece. Emily stood in the villa's shadowed corridor, the fading echoes of her 18th birthday party a distant hum. The velvet box containing the cursed jade pendant weighed heavily in her purse, a silent threat she'd soon neutralize. Ethan's probing questions about Pixie's absence and Huangxia's sly glances as the housekeeper, Mrs. Huang, had heightened her vigilance. She'd disrupted Rachel's body swap ritual by sending Pixie, the poodle harboring Rachel's soul, to a breeding kennel, but the battle was far from won. Ethan's ambition to seize the Shen group and kill her parents loomed large, and Huangxia's role tied the conspiracy together. To turn the tables, Emily needed to execute her counterplan, swap the pendant, weaken Rachel's soul, and expose her enemies, while wrestling with the moral cost of her actions. In the quiet corridor, Emily's resolve wavered. Her past life's betrayal, Ethan's cold betrayal, Jason's knives, Rachel's cruel smile, fueled her, but the kennel's grim reality haunted her. Pixie, though Rachel's vessel, was still a living creature, and Emily's order to breed her relentlessly felt like a descent into cruelty. She leaned against the wall, her breath uneven. She whispered that I'm not like them, but doubt gnawed at her. To save her parents and reclaim her life, she had to match Rachel's ruthlessness, yet preserve her humanity. The pendant, the Order of the Jade Veil's relic, required 30 days of contact with Pixie for the soul swap. By removing Pixie, Emily had bought time but needed to act decisively. She slipped into her study, locking the door. Her desk held a small package, delivered that morning. A replica jade pendant, identical to the cursed original, but powerless. Emily opened the velvet box, the real pendant's runes glinting faintly. Her plan was simple: wear the fake, hide the real, and break the ritual's chain. She'd contacted a jeweler days ago, using her Reborn knowledge to commission the duplicate. Her fingers trembled as she swapped the pendants, sealing the cursed one in a hidden compartment. The fake felt cold against her skin as she slipped it around her neck, symbolizing her deception. Next, Emily focused on Rachel's soul. The kennel, a seedy operation on Baijian City's outskirts, was her weapon. She'd paid the owner to breed Pixie aggressively, weakening Rachel's soul through physical strain. In her past life, Pixie's vitality had been key to the ritual's success, Rachel's soul thriving in the dog's healthy body. Now, Emily aimed to sap that strength. She pulled out her phone and texted the kennel owner to increase the breeding. Use whatever means necessary. Report daily. The message sent, a pang of guilt hit her. She imagined Pixie's frightened eyes but steeled herself. "It's Rachel, not the dog," she murmured, her voice firm but strained. Emily's thoughts turned to the conspiracy's layers. Rachel, driven by envy and leukemia, had masterminded the ritual to steal Emily's body. Ethan, her half-brother, plotted to kill their parents and seize the Shen group, his ambition fueled by years of resentment. As Mrs. Huang, Huangxia ensured Emily's compliance. Her greed was a weak point that Emily planned to exploit. Jason, in love with Rachel, was a pawn. His betrayal was a wound Emily buried. Her investigators' reports confirmed Ethan's bribes and the planned car accident, but her parents, warned, were safe for now. Emily had to keep Huangxia close, using her to unravel Ethan's network. She opened her laptop, accessing the villa's surveillance feed. Installed after her rebirth, cameras captured Ethan's tense exchange with a board member, who was likely one of his bribed allies. Emily saved the footage and evidence to expose him later. She also drafted a plan to tempt Huangxia. The housekeeper had stolen jewelry in her past life, and her greed was blatant. Emily would plant valuables, including the real pendant disguised as a gold amulet, to lure Huangxia into a trap. If Huangxia took the bait, she might further unwittingly disrupt Rachel's ritual. As Emily prepared to return to the party, her reflection in the study's mirror caught her eye. The fake pendant gleamed, a lie that felt like armor. Yet her eyes betrayed her turmoil, guilt for Pixie, fear for her parents, rage at her betrayers. She thought of her past self, trusting and kind, now replaced by a strategist forced to play dirty. She told herself, "I'm doing this for them," picturing her parents' faces. The moral cost was high, but losing her family again was unthinkable. She'd warned her parents, swapped the pendant, and weakened Rachel's soul. Each step was a brick in her fortress against Ethan's ambition. The party's noise called her back. Ethan and Jason would expect her to wear the pendant, and Huangxia's watchful eyes would track her every move. Emily straightened, her mask of innocence sliding into place. She'd play the doting sister, the loving fiancé, while her counterplan unfolded. Though heavy on her heart, Pixie's suffering was a necessary blow to Rachel. The real pendant, hidden, was her ace. Huangxia's greed, Ethan's overconfidence, she'd exploit them all. Emily stepped into the ballroom, her smile radiant, her resolve ablaze. The tables were turning, and she'd carve her victory from her enemy's mistakes. Emily stood in her bedroom, the dawn light filtering through the villa's curtains on the 30th day since her 18th birthday. The fake jade pendant hung around her neck, a cold reminder of her deception. Her counterplan, swapping the cursed pendant, sending Pixie to a breeding kennel, and manipulating Huangxia, had built to this moment. Ethan and Jason believed Rachel's soul, trapped in the poodle, would swap with Emily's today, completing the Order of the Jade Veil's ritual. But Emily had turned their scheme against them, and the climax of her revenge was about to unfold. Her heart pounded, a mix of triumph and dread, as she braced for the chaos she'd orchestrated. The past month had been a tightrope walk. In her room, Emily played the trusting sister, wearing the fake pendant while hiding the real one, which was disguised as a gold amulet. She'd endured Huangxia's watchful eyes as the housekeeper, knowing she was Ethan and Rachel's mother, complicit in their plot. Pixie's absence, explained as a training stint, had raised Ethan's suspicions, but Emily's surveillance cameras had captured his frantic whispers with Jason, confirming their desperation. She'd warned her parents of Ethan's plan to kill them in a staged accident, ensuring their safety. The ritual's deadline had arrived, and Emily's trap was set to spring. She descended the staircase, her black silk robe whispering against the marble. The villa was quiet, the party long over, but tension crackled. Ethan and Jason burst through the front door, their faces alight with feverish excitement. "Emily!" Jason called, rushing to her side. His eyes, wild with hope, scanned the fake pendant. "It's time, Rachel! It worked!" He reached for her, but Emily stepped back, her expression icy. "What are you talking about, Jason?" she said, her voice sharp. "I'm Emily. Who's Rachel?" Jason froze, confusion clouding his face. Ethan grabbed his arm, whispering, "Something's wrong. Check the pendant." Jason's fingers brushed the fake, his brow furrowing. "It's still here," he muttered, but doubt crept into his voice. Emily's pulse raced, but she kept her composure, savoring their unease. The ritual required the real pendant, which she'd given to Huangxia disguised as a tacky amulet. Her plan hinged on Huangxia's greed, a trait she'd exploited by leaving the amulet in plain sight. The kitchen door creaked open, and Huangxia emerged, her movements oddly youthful. She wore the gold amulet, its hidden jade pendant glinting. "Jason!" she cried, her voice high and familiar. "Rachel's." She threw herself into his arms, laughing maniacally. "We did it! I'm free!" Jason staggered back, horror dawning as he saw Huangxia's weathered face, not Emily's. Ethan's eyes widened, his face paling. "Rachel?" he choked. Huangxia, now Rachel, grinned, oblivious to their shock. "It's me, Ethan! The ritual worked!" Emily's lips curved into a triumphant smile, her trap revealed. She'd given Huangxia the real pendant, knowing the ritual would swap Rachel's soul from Pixie into Huangxia's body, not hers. The Order's rules were strict. The pendant's wearer became the new host. Rachel, expecting Emily's body, was now trapped in her mother's aging, cancer-ridden form. Emily stepped forward, her voice dripping with mock surprise. "Rachel? In Mrs. Huang's body? How unexpected." Rachel's grin faltered as she caught her reflection in a nearby mirror. A scream tore from her throat. "No, this isn't right." She clawed at the amulet, her eyes wild. "I'm supposed to be Emily." Ethan lunged toward Emily, rage twisting his features. "What did you do?" he roared. Emily held up the fake pendant, twirling it. "This? Just a cheap replica. The real one's with your mother, or should I say your sister." She laughed, the sound cold and deliberate, masking the guilt that flickered within. Jason's gaze darted to the kitchen, where a bloodied hook lay on the counter. "Where's Pixie?" he demanded, his voice trembling. Rachel, still in Huangxia's body, cackled. "When I woke up, that mutt barked at me, so I smashed its head in, gouged its eyes out too." Her glee turned to panic as she realized her mistake. Killing Pixie, her former vessel, had severed her last tie to the ritual. Ethan sank to his knees, a guttural cry escaping him. "You idiot, Rachel! That was your body!" Emily clapped slowly, her eyes gleaming. "Well done, Rachel. You've ruined everything." She turned to Ethan, her voice cutting. Your plan to kill Mom and Dad, to take the Shen group, it's over. I warned them, Ethan. They're safe. Jason lunged at her, but Emily sidestepped, her training from self-defense classes kicking in. Don't bother, Jason, she said. You're nothing without Rachel's lies. Rachel collapsed, sobbing in Huang Xia's frail body. Emily, you monster! I'll kill you! But her threats were hollow, her strength fading. Ethan's ambition, Rachel's envy, Jason's betrayal, they'd unraveled in a single moment. Emily's counterplan had worked, but her victory was bittersweet. She'd saved herself, but the cost, Pixie's suffering and hardened heart, weighed heavily. She pushed the guilt aside, focusing on the triumph. The trap had sprung, and her enemies were broken. Emily stood in the villa's grand foyer, the morning light casting stark shadows across the marble floor. The chaos of the failed body swap ritual still echoed. Rachel, trapped in Huang Xia's aging body, sobbed on the ground. Ethan knelt in defeat, his face ashen. Jason stood frozen, his eyes hollow with betrayal. Emily's counterplan had shattered their scheme. The real jade pendant, disguised as a gold amulet, had swapped Rachel's soul from Pixie into Huang Xia, not Emily. The fake pendant around Emily's neck gleamed, symbolizing her triumph. Yet her victory felt heavy, tempered by the emotional scars of her past life and the moral cost of her actions. The final reckoning was at hand, and it would come with her family's return. Rachel's wails filled the air, her voice cracking in Huang Xia's frail throat. Emily, you've ruined me! She screamed, clawing at the amulet. Ethan's head snapped up, his eyes blazing with grief and rage. You think you've won, Emily? He spat. This isn't over. Jason, trembling, muttered, Rachel, how did this happen? Emily's heart pounded, but she held her voice steady. It's over, Ethan. Your plan to kill Mom and Dad, to steal the Shen group, it's finished. I warned them, and they're coming home. As if on cue, the front door swung open, and Chen Donglin, Emily's father, stepped inside, his presence commanding. Her mother, Li Mei, followed, her face a mask of fury and sorrow. Emily's breath caught, relief flooding her. In her past life, Ethan's bribed driver had killed them in a staged car accident. This time, her warning had saved them, urging them to return early from their business trip. Chen's eyes swept the scene, Rachel's crumpled form, Ethan's defeat, Jason's despair, and settled on Emily. Emily, are you all right? He asked, his voice thick with concern. She nodded, tears pricking her eyes. I'm fine, Dad, but they tried to destroy us. Chen's gaze hardened as he turned to Ethan, who scrambled to his feet, defiance flickering. You don't understand, Father, Ethan began, but Chen cut him off, his voice like steel. Please don't call me that, Ethan. You're no son of mine. The words hung heavy, and Emily's heart clenched. She'd uncovered Ethan's true parentage through her investigator. He was not Chen's son, but his younger brother's, raised out of duty after his father's death and Huang Xia's abandonment. Chen stepped forward, his presence towering. You plotted to kill us, Ethan. You bribed our driver, manipulated the board, and tried to erase Emily for your sister Rachel. He gestured to Rachel, now in Huang Xia's body, her sobs quieting to a desperate whimper. You betrayed the family that raised you and gave you everything. Li Mei's voice trembled as she added, We loved you, Ethan. How could you? Emily saw the pain in her mother's eyes, mirroring her own. Despite Ethan's betrayal, he'd been family, and the wound cut deep. Ethan's face twisted, his ambition crumbling. You never saw me as equal, he roared. You favored Emily, the perfect heiress, while I was just the charity case. Rachel was my real family, and Huang Xia deserved justice. He pointed at Rachel, his voice breaking. You cast my mother aside, Chen. I would take it all. The Shen group, the legacy, for us. Chen's expression darkened. Huang Xia was never my love, Ethan. Your father was my brother, who died young. I took you in to honor him, not her. You were never mine, but I gave you a home. The revelation hit Ethan like a blow. He staggered, shaking his head. No! You're lying! But Chen's calm certainty silenced him. Emily stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. You let resentment poison you, Ethan. You and Rachel planned to kill me, to steal my life, but I fought back. She glanced at Rachel, whose cancer-ridden body trembled. Your sister's envy brought her here, and your ambition destroyed you both. Jason, silent until now, collapsed to his knees, muttering, I loved her. I thought it was right. Chen signaled to security guards waiting outside, their footsteps heavy on the marble. Take them, he ordered. Ethan struggled as the guards seized him, his screams echoing. "You'll pay, Emily, I'll come for you." Rachel, too weak to resist, was carried away, her eyes burning with hatred. Jason followed limply, his family's business already crumbling under Chen's influence, a consequence Emily had ensured through her father's network. As they vanished, the foyer fell silent, the weight of justice settling in. Emily turned to her parents, her mask of strength cracking. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner," she whispered, tears falling. Li Mei pulled her into a fierce embrace. "You saved us, Emily. You're stronger than we ever knew." Chen's hand rested on her shoulder, his pride evident. "You're the true Shen heir," he said. Emily's heart ached. Her victory had saved her family, but the cost of her ruthlessness lingered. She'd manipulated Huangxia, sacrificed Pixie, and hardened her heart. Yet standing with her parents, she felt a flicker of peace. The reckoning was complete, but Emily's journey wasn't over. Ethan's ambition had been crushed, Rachel's envy punished, Jason's betrayal avenged. Huangxia's role had unraveled with Rachel's fate. Emily wiped her tears, her resolve firm. She'd rebuild, not just for herself, but for the family she'd fought to protect. Once a battlefield, the villa was hers again, and she'd face the future with scars and strength. Emily Shen stood at the edge of Baijian City's international airport, her suitcase at her side, the hum of departing flights filling the air. The morning sun glinted off the terminal's glass, casting a warm glow over her, starkly contrasting the darkness she'd faced in the past month, and her 18th birthday, now weeks behind, had been a battlefield where she'd outwitted Rachel, Ethan, and Jason, dismantling their conspiracy to steal her life and the Shen Empire. The cursed jade pendant, the poodle pixie, and the Order of the Jade Veil's ritual were ghosts of a victory hard won. As she prepared to board a plane for a prestigious university abroad, Emily carried the strength of her triumph and the scars of her journey, ready to embrace a new dawn. The villa, once a stage for betrayal, was quiet now. Rachel, trapped in Huangxia's cancer-ridden body, had succumbed to the disease in a hospital ward, her envy and malice extinguished. Ethan, disowned after his true parentage as Chen Donglin's nephew was revealed, faced legal consequences for his attempted crimes, and his ambition to seize the Shen group was reduced to ashes. Jason, whose love for Rachel had blinded him, was destitute, and Chen's swift retaliation bankrupted his family's business. Huangxia's role as the conspiratorial housekeeper unraveled with Rachel's fate, and her greed led to her daughter's downfall. Emily's parents, saved from Ethan's planned car accident, stood by her, their trust in her unyielding. Emily's reflection in the airport's glass showed a young woman transformed. Her brown eyes, once soft with trust, now held a steely resolve, tempered by the pain of her past life. In that life, she died in Pixie's body, skinned by Ethan and Jason, her flesh cooked for Rachel's ritual. Reborn, she'd fought back, swapping the pendant, sending Pixie to a kennel, manipulating Huangxia, each act a step toward justice. Yet the cost lingered. She'd hardened her heart, guilt over Pixie's suffering a quiet ache. The poodle's remains, symbolically turned into a stew and sent to the kennel, had been her final act of retribution, a nod to her past life's horror. Emily didn't eat dog meat, then or now, but the gesture closed a circle, letting the beasts claim their own. She adjusted her scarf, the fake pendant long discarded, its real counterpart destroyed by her father to end the Order's curse. Her acceptance letter to a top finance program abroad lay in her bag, promising a future where she'd return to lead the Shen group. The empire, nearly lost to Ethan's greed, was hers to inherit, a responsibility she now embraced. Her parents' embrace before she left the villa had been fierce, Li Mei's tears mingling with pride. "You're our strength, Emily," Chen had said, his voice steady. "Build your future and come home." Their faith anchored her, a balm for the wounds of betrayal. Emily's thoughts drifted to her emotional journey. The naive girl who'd trusted Ethan's smiles and Jason's promises was replaced by a survivor who'd faced fear, guilt, and rage. She'd wrestled with the morality of her actions, Pixie's pain, Huangxia's manipulation, but each choice had been for her family's survival. Standing at the airport, she felt the weight of her scars and a quiet hope. She'd saved her parents, reclaimed her life, and broken Rachel's ritual. The cost had forged her, not broken her, and she was ready to rebuild. The boarding call for her flight crackled over the speakers, pulling her from her reverie. Emily glanced at the sky, where clouds parted to reveal a sliver of blue, a new beginning. She thought of Rachel's envy, born of poverty and illness, and Ethan's ambition, fueled by resentment. Their choices had shaped their ruin, just as Emily's had shaped her victory. Jason's blind love and Huangxia's deceit were shadows now, fading as she stepped toward her future. Though necessary, the kennel's grim work was a memory she'd carry, a reminder to balance strength with compassion. As she handed her boarding pass to the attendant, Emily's heart lifted. The villa, Baijan City, the Shen group, they'd wait for her return. She'd study, grow, and come back as the leader her parents believed in. Her past life's pain had given her purpose, her rebirth a chance to rewrite her story. She boarded the plane, her suitcase stowed and settled by the window. The runway stretched before her, a path to new horizons. Emily closed her eyes, the hum of the engines a lullaby of possibility. Her scars were her story, but her strength was her future.